much. We'll now go to hear from Tristan Sontag. Welcome to the committee, and thank you for coming. And you have 10 minutes.
Will do.
All right, thank you.
So, hello everyone, and thank you. I'll just read from here. First of all, I want to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Algonquin peoples and recognize the endless work we all must do to respect our Indigenous peoples. And I would like to thank all members of the Legislative Assembly for the opportunity to present today. British Columbia is full of opportunities. British Columbia is full of equality. British Columbia is full of acceptance. However, British Columbia is a work in progress. Society is always evolving, and so should our government. Currently, government is not doing enough to protect people with disabilities in British Columbia, especially autistic people. We end up getting the short end of the stick, from disability assistance that can't meet up with the costs of living here, to the continuing practice of isolation rooms, to the lack of regard for the mental health of autistic people, to even funding and supports for queer autistic individuals. British Columbia is truly behind the times. We at Aspies On Mars believe in change you can count on for a better BC, and we're looking to take British Columbia there. I come from a middle-class family. My aunt raised me for most of my childhood. I went to school. I enjoyed school very much. I had an okay childhood. But the way the school system treated me was like I was an object that can be stowed away, expendable, less than. The first school board I was in, New Westminster, used the practice of isolation rooms. I wasn't the first person to receive this abuse, and I will not be the last child to experience this in British Columbia. To combine this with my experience of high school, and no wonder I'm defensive and skeptical about people and sometimes the government. I received supports through the Autism Funding Unit until I aged out. Immediately, my counseling ran out. We paid for my counseling out of pocket for the next 3 years, and we continue to do so at this point. The trust between my counselor and I was a relationship built on trust. I've been seeing her for about 7 years now. Finding a counselor that you can trust, especially for folks on the autism spectrum, is challenging. Once you find the right counselor, it's best to stick with it, in my experience. Community Living British Columbia currently does not fund private counseling, which I believe shows a lack of due care to autistic individuals in our mental health system. Expendable. Less than. Persons with disabilities assistance is helpful for those who can't work or need time to figure out what to do in their lives. But it's also useful for people with disabilities to start a business, like I have. It's definitely not enough to live on. Persons with disabilities are unique in each of their challenges, yet persevere in perpetuity. People with disabilities are a testament to the challenges that are overcome as a result of courageousness and perseverance. Persons with disabilities come in many shapes and forms, including autistic individuals like myself. I have many friends on the spectrum that need support, whether it's being themselves or integrating with the community. My advocacy role plays a big part in making British Columbia a better place for all of us. I would like to see coordination between the Ministry of Children and Family Development and the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction to implement a seamless transition for children aging out of the Autism Funding Unit to CLBC's Personalized Supports Initiative program. Policy should be implemented to ensure that the transition is as seamless and automatic as possible. This would benefit me and others like myself who need to access disability support services in the private sector. Families should not have to worry about losing access to services. Families should not have to worry about their loved ones being hampered from being themselves. Autistic individuals have a higher chance of experiencing gender dysphoria or same-sex attraction than the normal population. Autistic individuals need counseling and other supports to continue for as long as they are needed. We believe that sexual orientation and gender identity should be protected under the new legislation that's being proposed called the Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity Protection Act to include home care rights for queer, autistic, and other people with other disabilities in British Columbia. This will ensure that gay, lesbian, bi, and trans people aren't denied access to a supportive community that helps them navigate the world and become the person they really are. We also believe that making community living British Columbia offer the same services as the Autism Funding Unit allows adults who have aged out of such unit to continue receiving services without interruption. I would like to see British Columbia legally index income assistance to the rate of inflation to eliminate the devaluation of the money of disabled British Columbians, thereby enforcing economic security for the most vulnerable. This is similar to what Rachel Notley, the former Premier of Alberta, who did with AISH, Alberta's version of Persons with Disability Assistance. I would also like to see the School Act be amended to ban the practice of isolation rooms so that British Columbia's children with disabilities aren't left alone, treated as expendable, or less than anyone else in the system. So in conclusion, thank you for listening to my presentation. Thank you for listening to the voices of people like myself, who have a disability that these services have an impact on. My disability may make things difficult for me, but I'd rather put up a fight for the rights and treatment we all deserve than stay silent. I'd rather speak up than sit on the sidelines, and I'd rather have honesty and integrity in everything I do than take shortcuts for my own gain. I wish that all members of the Legislative Assembly take the promise that they put forth to their constituents and act on some of the measures here to deliver a change you can count on for a better BC. Thank you.
Well done. Very, very succinct and well-delivered presentation. I really appreciate it, and so do my colleagues, and I'm
Thank
sure
you.
that. Tristan, I think the deputy has a question for you.
Yes, hello?
I'm just wondering when the next podcast is.
Oh, really? Thanks.
Tell us about your podcast, Tristan.
Sure. So Aspies On Mars is a podcast of autism for autism. We have people from various different types of abilities. Last episode, we did an episode on, I think it was romance, relationships, and love. And that was filmed on May 17th on Idaho at the Anvil Center in New Westminster, where they had a play run by the Community Living Society and Real Talk called Romance, Relationships, and Rights. So that was our last episode, and we talked with a wide array of people with different types of disabilities about romance and relationships.
Sounds like an important topic to have discussed, and that's excellent. Can you just make sure we all know how to find it?
Yeah, sure. Go to aspiesonmars.com. That's where you'll find it. There's also a link on the bottom of the website where you'll click YouTube, and you can watch our episodes there. We're hoping to release on iTunes in the near future. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Any other? Lori, you have a question.
Just wanted to comment that you seem like an extremely capable person to me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask about the On Mars bit. Have you read Oliver Sacks' book, An Anthropologist on Mars? And is that where the title comes from?
No, it comes from the note that it's all about it's differentiating autistic people from others in terms of the communication barrier. So for autistic people, we tend to have some difficulties with socializing with others, and that's what it comes from. It comes from the fact that autistic people can have trouble, and we speak a different language than the rest of the community.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tristan. Michelle has a follow-up question.
Yes.
Thanks, Tristan. I was just wondering, you spoke about CLBC and the Personal Supports Initiative,
Yeah.
and I'm just wondering, do you receive any funding? Did you transfer into CLBC, or were you too high functioning and not receiving those funding? So all the support you get now is PWD and the employment that you mentioned.
I do receive PSI services, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. You're speaking for a lot of people who may not have had the courage or the inclination or even know about this committee. And I hope that when you speak, not just on your own behalf, you're speaking for a lot of people who may not have the opportunity to speak, and that's always something to be commended. So I really appreciate you speaking, not just for the constituent that we're speaking about mostly, but the queer and the bi and the trans, and their voice also needs to be included in this discussion.
Yeah.
And so for that reason and for other reasons, for bringing us a really good presentation, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the committee.
Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you.